Welcome to today's Roundtable. We have as our guest today Ambassador Igor Khovaev. Did I pronounce it correctly? Of the Russian
Your
Federation.
pronunciation is perfect.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think before anything else, I should greet you on your special holiday for Russian diplomats. Your day of Russian diplomats. What is the proper congratulations or happy Ambassador's Day?
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me for this talk.
You're welcome.
To be frank, so it's a challenge for me to talk, to have an opportunity to talk with a so prominent journalist like you, Mr. Dante. And thank you so much for your congratulations. Yeah, definitely. Yesterday we celebrated our professional holiday, the Day of Russian Diplomats, because this day on February 10, in 1549, can you imagine?
Wow.
So the first diplomatic agency was created in Russia.
Wow.
It was called the Ambassadorial Department.
Wow.
So and since at that time, we Russian diplomats, we have cherished our traditions, our professional traditions, to serve our country, to contribute to peace, stability, and security at global and regional levels. And now I think, of course, the diplomatic service now, of course, it's a bit different from the diplomatic service which existed even 50 years or 100 years ago.
Sure.
But we try to maintain, to keep the same principles. And one of these basic principles is very simple. We Russian diplomats, we can implement the major task to create favorable external conditions for our national development only if we are able to make as many friends as possible.
Well,
and I think it's quite relevant. It's like the fundamental principle of the foreign policy pursued by His Excellency President Duterte: friend to everyone, enemy to none.
Yes,
so we see. The Russian diplomats and Philippine diplomats, they have a lot in common.
Well, I'm sorry for making you work on your special day, but
it's a working day for us.
Okay, sir. Yes, you mentioned that President Duterte has extended his hand of friendship to your country. I think more than any other Philippine president in the past. Maybe if you can give us an update about those relations. Can we start with trade? In 2017, our countries signed the Joint Commission on Trade and Cooperation. What have been the developments since 2017?
So, yeah, definitely. So the creation of this commission is remarkable. It's a remarkable sign. So to some extent, it's a milestone in the history of our bilateral relations. Mm-hmm. And you said absolutely. So it's absolutely right that now, of course, all of us witness an unprecedented development of our bilateral relations due to His Excellency President Duterte and Russian President Putin. Mm-hmm. So, by the way, they have a very good chemistry. And now, of course, I believe that our two nations have all necessary preconditions to become new close partners and very good friends. Because the legacy of our bilateral relationship is very positive. We have no disputes, no contradictions, no differences. The only obstacle is an incredibly low level of mutual knowledge. And there is one recipe to overcome this obstacle. We need to intensify people-to-people contacts at all levels and in all fields. And in this respect, of course, our trade and economic investment cooperation is of utmost importance. And our Joint Commission on Trade and Economic Cooperation plays a coordinating role in this process. The Commission has already had 2 regular sessions. The last session was convened in Moscow in August last year, just on the eve of the second official visit by His Excellency President Duterte to Russia. So it was a successful meeting, and our joint commission determined specific areas where our two sides, business people from our two countries, should focus on. So, and among these priority areas, of course, are energy, telecommunications, transportation, pharmaceutical and industry, and public health. So agriculture, of course. So we think that we need just a few priority areas
Right.
in order to push our trade and investment cooperation, in order to help business people of our two countries to know each other better,
Right.
to establish direct
Right.
ties.
Right.
So it takes time.
Right.
But I'm sure that all of us are on the right track.
Right. So what are some of the products that you think are good for export to Russia? I was looking up that we send you canned sardines, tuna, and coconut milk, but what other products are you looking at from the Philippines?
First of all, I would like to remind you that last year, so a few Philippine enterprises, so they have received a permission to supply. Philippine agriculture and seafood enterprises. So they have received an official permission from the Russian government to supply their products to the market of Russia and other member states of the Eurasian Economic Union.
Okay.
The Eurasian Economic Union consists of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia. So it's a huge market. So, and if you Russian agricultural enterprises, so they may now supply their products to the Philippine market, because all of them comply with the relevant phytosanitary requirements.
All right.
So apart from agricultural products, for example, your tropical fruits and vegetables are in great demand in the Russian market, and seafood as well. So apart from that, the Philippines, so your country supplies a lot of electronic devices, electronic products.
Okay.
So, and I think that the export of these items should increase, can and should increase. And Russia supplies, of course, energy resources, metal products, vehicles, by the way.
Yeah.
So the deliveries of Russian vehicles are increasing too. For example, buses, and it's in compliance with your program of modernizing your public transport in your cities and towns, for example. Buses, Russian buses, Gazelle are quite well known, for example, in Cebu. So, and Russian trucks, Ural, Kamaz, believe me, please, they are very good trucks. We usually say that these trucks don't need roads. They need only destinations.
Okay.
Because
we need that in Metro Manila.
yeah, definitely. So these are very good and very reliable, very reliable trucks, and it's quite simple to serve them.
Well, have there been any developments of maybe or explorations into doing assembly in the Philippines?
Yeah, definitely. So it's now under consideration.
Okay.
So, and the Russian suppliers, they want to create joint enterprises, joint ventures here on the Philippine soil in order for the purpose of assembly of vehicles here.
Right. Well,
so it's much cheaper.
Right. A lot of these things we're talking about, of course, are commercial activities. But I guess what I want to ask is, how do the Russians view the Philippines as a market? With, of course, ASEAN in the background and the larger Asia region, of course. Is there interest in the Philippines? I know because China, we're so close to China, right? And China, I think, commands a lot more attention than many countries around the world, but especially in this part of the world. How do we figure in the Russian attention or focus or radar?
First of all, let me clarify
Okay.
how we Russians view the Philippines as a
Okay.
whole, as a country, as a nation. So for us, the Philippines is a big, influential, and major partner in the
Okay.
Asia-Pacific region.
Okay.
It's not an addition to any other country. Not at
Okay.
all, please.
Okay. So by
It's a
itself.
sovereign, influential, important, independent player in the Asia-Pacific region. And that's why we want to build a robust partnership and friendship with the Philippines. So it has nothing to do with the relations between Russia and any other country. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because it's a big value for us.
Right.
So, and in all respects, politically, economically, in terms of regional security as well, of course. And we want to become a good, reliable partner and friend of the Philippines. A trade and investment partner, a technological partner, a partner in terms of security, and so on. So we closely coordinate our efforts on many international issues, on in the United Nations, for example. So at regional fora, of course. And as far as trade investment cooperation is concerned, so we need new markets.
Okay.
The Russian economy
All right.
needs new markets. It's an objective requirement for our national development, especially for the development of our Far Eastern and Siberian regions. So I would like to draw your attention to a very simple geographical fact.
Okay.
Geographically, we are not very far from each other.
People forget that, yes.
Yeah, definitely, because usually Filipinos, they perceive Russia as a very, very far, very, very distant country.
Right.
But it's not true. The Russian Far Eastern region is quite close to the Philippines. So the distance between the Far Eastern region of Russia and the Philippines is similar to the distance between Japan and your country. Well, almost.
Yes.
Almost
a little
similar.
bit in
Yeah.
Vladivostok, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So we are neighbors.
Okay.
We are two neighbors in the Asia-Pacific region. So we deserve to be close partners.
All right.
So in terms of trade and investment, once again,
Okay.
so we need new markets
Okay.
for our goods, for our products, for our technologies.
Okay.
So Russia is not just a gas station.
Okay.
Believe me, please. Russia is a great technological power. We have sophisticated technologies in many, many areas, in many industries.
Right.
And we are ready to share our technologies with our partners, like the Philippines.
All right.
Once again, what we need to do in the first place,
Okay.
we need to learn each other much better. We need to increase the level of mutual awareness.
All right.
So that's why I'm saying again, we need to intensify people-to-people contacts at all levels. Right. Business people to business people, politicians to politicians. Right. So artists to artists, students to students, teachers to teachers.
Right.
And I'm sure that people, they will identify, will explore a bulk of new opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation. Cooperation between two sovereign, independent states. Because we are not talking about any military alliance, not at all. Russia doesn't need military alliances in the Asia-Pacific region. We don't have any military alliance with anyone. But we need new friends and new partners. It's a big difference.
Right.
Not allies, but new partners.
Right.
Independent, sovereign partners.
Well, speaking of new friends, what should Filipinos know about Russia? I mean, of course, when you look at the news, sometimes it's a little bit slanted or maybe limited in the content that we report. What are some of the misconceptions you would say about Russia among Filipinos that you would like to maybe correct or maybe educate us about?
Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not in a position to educate you.
All right, well,
you Filipinos.
Filipinos
are well-educated people.
When you say that there should be more people to people and getting to know each other and trusting.
But I have already spent in your country
Yes.
almost 5 years.
Yes.
So on the basis of my personal experience.
Yes, sir.
So I think that I can make some conclusions.
Okay.
I usually say that it's time for Russians and Filipinos to get rid of outdated cliches.
Okay.
As for you, Filipinos.
Okay. Are you talking about the Cold War cliches?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, definitely. Please forget all crazy Hollywood movies about Russia, first of all.
Okay.
Because they have nothing to do with real Russia.
Okay.
The real Russia is absolutely different.
Okay.
Look at me. I think, I believe, I'm quite different from those Russian aggressive and stupid guys, as portrayed by Hollywood movies. Huh?
Sure.
Hollywood produced a lot of wonderful movies, but unfortunately not single good movie about my country. I can only regret. Just propaganda. And of course,
Have there been any good?
please, please don't forget that the mainstream Western mass media is not a really objective, unbiased source of information about Russia. So I'm not in a position to give you Filipinos advices, but it seems to me it's time to enlarge our horizons.
Right. Well, this is what
It's
I'm
time to get information from different sources and just to compare and to analyze. I am saying that as a guy who was born and grew up in the former Soviet Union. It was a closed society.
asking. Right.
So when I was young, so I could read only just a few Soviet newspapers. That's all. So it was a limited source of information. It was not possible to create an objective vision on the basis of just
Right.
on the basis of just a few newspapers and a few official television channels.
All right.
So that's why, please, don't forget that our world is not limited to one country, your traditional ally.
Sure. But this is what I was asking.
The world is much richer, is much
Right.
more complicated,
Right.
much more diverse. And Russia is a substantial, significant part of our own common world.
Right. But as you were saying, you've been here a few years. When you talk to Filipinos, what surprises Filipinos when you talk to them about Russia and Russia-Philippine relations? I guess that's what I was trying to get at. Trying to get to know each other better, as you said.
It seems to me the biggest discovery my Philippine friends made,
Yes.
to some extent due to my help, is that Russians and Filipinos have a lot in common.
Okay.
Russians are friendly people.
Okay.
They don't smile as often as you Filipinos do, because we prefer to keep our emotions inside.
Okay.
But by our hearts,
Very similar.
we are similar. Russians are as warm people as you Filipinos are.
Okay.
So that's why we deserve to be friends and partners.
Okay. You mentioned that several times. Actually, I was looking at some of your interviews that you don't need military alliances in this region, but you're instead looking for friendship and partnership and cooperation. Why is that? I mean,
Yes, and we should
why-
combine our efforts because we have common threats and challenges. First of all, terrorism, piracy at sea, drug trafficking, human trafficking.
Right.
So, and there is no need to create a military alliance in order to effectively deal with these challenges.
Right. Right. Well, before,
We need partnership.
right. Well, before that, and before we leave trade, because that's an important part of the relationship. What else can the Philippine government do to attract more businessmen? I mean, from your experience here in the Philippines, what can be done to make the local environment more friendly to Russian business?
As far as I understand, the Philippine government cannot create special favorable conditions for Russian business people. So economic environment should be the same for all for business people from all countries.
Okay.
And we don't seek any privilege in this respect. So I think that in my assessment, the investment environment in your country is favorable.
Okay.
It's positive. So Russian business people have all preconditions to successfully work on the Philippine market. What's needed is a consistent and persistent approach. Sometimes I think that business people of Russia and the Philippines, they should be more persistent and consistent, more determined, more dedicated.
Right.
Of course, it's not easy to explore new markets.
Of course.
It's always related to challenges, risks. At least to some extent, it's always a risky undertaking.
Right. Right.
But business people should be brave.
Right.
So unlike the Soviet times, the Russian government cannot instruct business people what they should do,
Right.
what market they should explore.
Right.
But we can advise them, and we do it. We recommend Russian business people. The Russian embassy here is doing that. We try to to draw their attention to new business opportunities here in the Philippines. We try to explain them that the Philippines is a friendly country. There is a friendly, positive economic environment here. There will be no discrimination
Right.
here in the Philippines.
Right.
Because, some Western countries, so they imposed economic sanctions on Russia
Right.
and on Russian business people.
Right.
So the Philippines it's an absolutely different case. So the Philippine market, the Philippine economy deserves the attention of Russian business people.
Right.
But I'm saying again, business people should be so I would like to emphasize it once again. They should be more consistent and persistent.
Right. Are there specific industries that you're looking at that would be, that would be very attractive to Russian businessmen?
Yeah, I would like to draw your attention to the initiative of the Russian biggest energy company, one of the Russian biggest energy company. Its name is Rosneft. Rosneft means is translated from Russian into English like Russian oil.
Russian oil. Okay.
But it's a multi-dimensional corporation.
Okay.
So, and this is a state-run company, by the way. So it means that the Russian government responsible
Okay.
for the effectiveness of this company.
Right.
And Rosneft company made, in my view, so a very attractive offer to Philippine partners. They offered the so-called integrated approach to the development of your energy industry. What does it mean? It means that the Russian company is ready to offer sophisticated technologies and energy resources for producing producing energy in different forms from different sources.
I see.
From traditional energy based on oil and gas
Okay.
to hydro power plants, to the construction of hydro power plants, renewable sources, of course, of energy, and the use of nuclear technologies for peaceful purpose,
Right.
of course. So Russia has sophisticated technologies in all energy areas, and we are ready to share
Are there any?
our technologies with our Philippine partners. We are ready to provide enough sufficient energy resources to your country, to your growing economy,
Right.
and we are ready to build new power plants
Are there any serious?
in the Philippines
Are there any serious?
and to build the necessary infrastructure, energy infrastructure.
And we need it. Are there any serious negotiations taking place, or is it all exploratory at this point?
Some specific projects are now under consideration.
Okay. You
So just in October last year, so
Okay.
the executive director of Rosneft company, Mr. Igor Khovaev, he visited Manila and he paid a courtesy call on His Excellency President Duterte. President Duterte received him in the Malacanang Palace, and they had a very good discussion. And I'm happy to say that His Excellency President Duterte approved the offered integrated approach for our bilateral cooperation in the energy field.
Right. We'd like to get some more information about that. I think those are important
So
stories.
I wouldn't like to go into the details, of
Sure.
course, because it's to
early.
business people of
Okay.
our two countries.
Okay.
Yes, to elaborate
Right.
specific details, specific parameters,
Right.
modalities.
Right.
So it's too early to talk about specific projects, but I'm saying again, so it's under consideration.
Right. And you mentioned nuclear power, and in the past there have been some talks about maybe Russia supplying a floating nuclear plant in the vicinity. Are those serious, or these are again exploratory talks we're talking about here?
Mr. Dante, we Russians, we are serious people.
Serious but warm-hearted.
Sometimes, of course, we like joking, but
Okay.
but when we talk about business, so we are serious.
Okay.
Business. When we talk about business and security,
It's serious.
we are always very serious,
Okay.
and we try to be very responsible.
Okay.
So, as for the nuclear energy, I would like to remind you, first of all, that as of today, Russia is the only country which has the full cycle of nuclear energy production.
Okay.
Only Russia. So Russia is a leader in this nuclear industry.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but no one is able to compete with Russia in this field.
Okay.
Of course, when we start talking about the nuclear technologies, nuclear energy, so people usually recall the incident at Chernobyl
Of course.
nuclear power plant. So it's understandable. But please don't forget, Chernobyl nuclear power plant is located in Ukraine, not in Russia.
Okay.
Next, now we have we have technologies which much safer
Okay.
than the technology which was used to build the Chernobyl power plant. That's an absolutely outdated technology. We don't use this technology anymore.
Right.
So I don't remember any incident on nuclear power plants built by Russia, in Russia or outside Russia, during last at least 30 years. So once again, everything we offer is absolutely safe.
Right. Are there serious talks?
So, and we are ready to help your country
Okay.
to use this source of energy.
Right.
But it's up to you to decide.
Okay.
It's up to you, Filipinos.
It's in our court.
We offer, but it's up to you to accept, to decide,
Okay.
accept our offer or not. And please don't forget that nuclear technologies are used not only in the energy industry. Nuclear technologies are can and should be used in the public health in order against cancer. So in agriculture, for example, in order to prolong, to extend the shelf life of fruits and vegetables, it's quite important. If you are interested to supply your fruits and vegetables to the Russian market, for example, to the European part of Russia. So nuclear technologies are used in dozens different fields and areas, and we are ready to use any form, any technology. So any project with our Philippine partners in this field. Once again, the final say belongs to you, Filipinos. It's up to you.
Okay, Ambassador. You mentioned that Russia is looking for partnership and cooperation against regional threats. And one of the biggest things in the news now is this coronavirus. It's interesting, we were talking a while ago, that your scientists are testing something. You want to talk about the testing that's being done in Russia about the coronavirus?
First of all, I'm sorry for my maybe a bit unusual voice.
And it's not the coronavirus that you have.
No, yeah. I assure you that it has nothing to do
safe.
with the coronavirus. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely safe. So it's just So it's a consequence of my pharyngitis.
Yes.
I am sorry. I'd like to inform you,
Uh-huh.
and it must be interesting for you and
Very, yeah.
for all Filipinos,
And the world. Yeah.
that 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, so the world, all of us, were quite afraid of the so-called Ebola fever.
Yes, in Western Africa.
Yeah. But the Ebola fever was defeated, was demolished. Why? Because Russian scientists created an effective vaccine
Okay.
against Ebola fever.
Okay.
And the vaccine was approved by the World Health Organization. So we have very good scientists in this field. And now they are working together with the Chinese colleagues and partners in order to create an effective vaccine against coronavirus as soon as possible. I don't know details,
Of course.
but as far as I know, as of today, so a vaccine has already been invented, but it's now being tested. So it's too early
Right.
to say finally whether this is an effective solution against coronavirus or not yet. But I hope we are on the right track.
Right.
And I believe that an effective vaccine against coronavirus will be created quite soon. So it will be defeated.
Right. Well, please let us know when,
The mankind will survive.
please let us know when there are developments. Speaking of China, can we talk about regional issues? The U.S. in particular has been very concerned about China's rise, and the Philippines, of course, has had its issues with China with regard to the West Philippine Sea, or the South China Sea, as others call it. How does Russia view China in terms of the geopolitical environment in this region?
You know, China is our biggest neighbor. So there is only one way. We need to have good neighborhood relations. The rise of China is an objective process. So this process maybe creates some challenges,
Sure.
but at the same time, it creates much more opportunities for cooperation and partnership. So we highly value our good relations with the People's Republic of China. So our relations, the relationship between China and Russia is officially called privileged strategic partnership.
Okay.
So our cooperation is developing very well in many fields, many fields. So I'm saying again, we highly appreciate it. We highly appreciate help and support of our Chinese partners, especially after the Western countries imposed economic sanctions on Russia. So it doesn't mean that we have similar views on all problems,
Of course.
but we have so many mechanisms for dialogue, for coordinating our efforts. And these mechanisms allow us to understand each other adequately and to find mutually acceptable solutions in each and every case.
So what is Russia doing to make sure that...
So, and there is no alternative
Right.
to that.
Right.
So I'm saying again, my idea is very simple. The rise of China is an objective process.
Okay.
So that's why all of us should combine our efforts now to help China, first of all, to defeat the coronavirus.
Right.
It's in our common interest,
Right.
because all of us depend on each other.
Right.
It's not possible to isolate ourselves from this or that country.
Right.
It's not possible at all.
Right.
That's why only stupid politicians, for example, can dream that it's possible to isolate Russia.
All right.
It's ridiculous. But China is the biggest country in the world in terms of population. So it's a technological and industrial superpower. So it's a very important player in international affairs. And what's important is just to find a sound ground
Right.
for a mutually beneficial bilateral cooperation.
Do you think it's fair or unfair to view China as a military threat in the region? What is the Russian perspective on this?
We don't see any military threat from China. That's from the Russian perspective.
Okay.
We understand that in the region there is a problem of territorial disputes.
Sure.
Our position is very clear in this respect. Russia, is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, is also responsible for global peace, stability, and security. And that's why we are deeply convinced that all territorial disputes should be solved exclusively by peaceful means, through talks, and on the basis of the international law. And just one example. We have the longest land border with China. It's more than 2,000 kilometers. Can you imagine? So, and we have a lot of territorial disputes with
Okay.
China.
All right.
So our bilateral talk on the border dispute settlement took more than 30 years. Can you
Wow.
imagine?
Wow.
But finally we elaborated a mutually acceptable solution. So we signed more than 20 years ago, so a bilateral agreement on the delimitation and demarcation of our common land border. And now the Russian-Chinese border is the border of peace, partnership, and friendship. So I think it clearly shows that it's always very difficult to solve territorial disputes, but it's not mission impossible.
Okay.
It's possible to settle the disputes if all the parties concerned are determined to find a mutually acceptable solution. But it can take many years.
Well, talking about a problem that is not easy to solve, it's a smaller country called North Korea, which, of course, Russia has been involved in the past, trying to bring about a peaceful, I suppose, settlement in that peninsula. How does Russia view that threat, the North Korea threat?
Thank you for your question. And regarding China, regarding the so-called Chinese military threat,
Okay.
we believe that the best solution to get rid of any feeling of threat
Okay.
is to build a comprehensive architecture of security in the region.
Okay.
So close military alliances, in our view, from our perspective, is not a good way to provide security for all regional countries.
Okay.
Because any military alliance is an attempt to provide just a few members of that alliance with security to a considerable extent at the expense of security of other countries which are outside this or that military alliance.
Okay.
But the security, it should be for all, not for a selected few.
Okay.
So all regional countries, big or small,
Okay.
they should be part of the comprehensive regional architecture of security. They should depend on each other.
Okay.
And in our view, it's the best way to rule out any possibility of military conflicts in the region.
Okay.
And I suggest that the North Korean nuclear problem should be considered, should be discussed in the same way,
Okay.
against the same background.
Okay.
So as for the Russian position, once again, the solution must be peaceful.
Okay.
No use of military force and no threat to use military force.
Okay.
People in North Korea, they are not easily frightened. So they can make a lot of sacrifices. Mm-hmm. They are proud, and they are ready to sacrifice a lot in order to defend their national dignity.
Mm-hmm. They've had some.
So it's useless to threaten them.
Right.
Absolutely, but any threat poisons the international atmosphere, the international climate.
Okay.
It undermines possibilities to find a diplomatic solution. Mm-hmm. So, in our view, there is only one way to solve this problem.
Okay.
In principle, of course.
Okay.
No nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula.
You're against
absolutely,
that. Yes.
Absolutely against. No nuclear weapons. All nuclear technologies should be used only exclusively for the peaceful purpose.
Okay.
But no nuclear weapons. Nothing to discuss in this respect.
Okay.
That's our fundamental principled position. But North Korea needs some guarantees of their security.
Okay.
As far as we understand their position, because first of all, we need to understand adequately the mentality of our counterpart, North Korean counterpart. They want a guarantee of security. Okay. They want to be sure that no country from abroad will interfere into their domestic developments.
Okay.
No one will try to make the so-called political regime change.
Okay. And
that's their concerns. That's their major concern.
right.
So, in our view, if the North Korean leadership gets well-protected international guarantees in this respect for their security, so I think it will be a way to reach a compromise.
And what is Russia's?
It would be a way to convince the North Korean leadership to refuse to reject plans of creating nuclear weapons.
And what is Russia's?
And their delivery means.
What is Russia's role in this scenario? You think? I mean, how does Russia plan to contribute to maintaining this peace and stability, as you were saying?
So to be frank, I have no specific recipe in this respect.
Okay.
Nobody knows that.
Right.
But I would like to remind you that 10 or 15 years ago, there was the so-called six-party mechanism.
Yes.
And it was a venue for discussions. Mm-hmm. It was a good venue for discussing any concern. Mm-hmm. So we don't think that the bilateral format, U.S., North Korea,
is working.
Is workable. Maybe for political games, for propaganda, yes, it's okay. But for a true, long-standing, just solution, we have a lot of doubts that this is a workable mechanism. Mm-hmm. So an appropriate discussion venue should be reestablished. And all parties concerned should be involved into that multilateral dialogue, including both two Korean states, of course, China, Japan, the United States, Russia, maybe somebody else. I don't know.
Right.
So it should be an open format.
Right.
So, and any country or any international organization which can contribute to this peace process, so it should have an access to that mechanism. But once again, the solution can be found only through dialogue. So the use of force, or even threat to use force, It's not productive at all, diplomatically speaking.
Right, right, right. What about moving on to ASEAN? How does Russia view this regional bloc? I mean, I suppose that there's an economic aspect to it, but are there any other concerns? What's the Russian view on ASEAN?
ASEAN and Russia have the relations of strategic dialogue partnership. We highly value the status of our relationship. We fully support the central leading role of ASEAN in Asian Pacific affairs. So we sincerely wish ASEAN every success on their way of consolidation, of increasing in interconnectivity. So, and we believe that ASEAN will play a major, indispensable role in the Asia-Pacific region. So we want to develop our relations with ASEAN as much as possible in all fields. We are committed to our mutually beneficial cooperation with ASEAN as a whole and with every ASEAN member state, including the Philippines, of course.
Right.
So it's a very important region for us.
There's
As I have already said, it's important for a successful development, especially of our Far Eastern and Siberian region. And we're ready to help our ASEAN partners in all possible forms, in terms of security, economic development, technological cooperation, and so on. And of course, we need the support of ASEAN as well. So it should be a two-way street.
Right. There's an upcoming visit. There's a port of call in Manila. Is it from the Russian Navy, or I think you mentioned something that there will be a port call visit in Manila soon from Russia.
I'm happy to say that recent years, so Russian Navy ships they have visited the Philippine ports on a regular basis.
Okay.
And by the way, so now it's a two-way street.
Oh, okay.
Because Philippine Navy ships also visit the Russian port of Vladivostok.
Oh, okay.
So 2 years ago, so it was the first visit by a Russian Navy ship. By a Philippine
Navy ship.
Navy ship to the port of Vladivostok. It was a historic event.
Okay.
So, and it's very good because Russian people deserve to see Philippine sailors and Philippine Marines on the Russian soil as partners and friends.
Okay.
So Russian Navy ships visit your ports as partners and friends.
Okay.
So, and of course, it contributes to our mutual understanding because it's especially important for the servicemen and servicewomen to communicate directly with each other.
Okay.
Just to see that they are not enemies.
Okay.
They are friends and partners. So, and it's time to combine our efforts to efficiently cope with terrorism, drug trafficking, as I have already said, piracy at sea, and so on.
Right.
So, I would like to say once again that my country is ready
Okay.
to help our Philippine partners increase your defense capabilities.
Okay.
We fully support your legitimate struggle against terrorism.
All right.
The efforts of the Philippine government and Philippine society aimed at reestablishing peace and stability in the south of your country.
Okay.
And we have a lot to offer.
Okay.
My country produces sophisticated arms and weapons.
All right.
So we are ready to share our technologies, our defense technologies here. So we are ready to use all forms of military cooperation, joint drills, for example,
Right.
staff training,
Is that something that's
sharing information.
Is that something that's being?
It's up to you to decide.
Right. It's again on our court, right?
Oh, it depends on all of us.
Okay.
But we offer, and it's up to you to decide.
Are there more serious or more advanced talks now that the Philippines is maybe rethinking about its VFA with the U.S.?
I'm not in a position to make comments on this subject.
Okay.
Because I always explain that as a Russian diplomat, I'm not in a position to make comments on your domestic political developments
Okay.
and on your relationship with any third nation.
Okay.
It's up to you, to Filipinos, to make
Okay.
comments.
All right.
Because we deeply respect your country as a sovereign, independent partner.
Sir, you've been here.
But we proceed from the fact that our military, our defense cooperation between Russia and the Philippines has nothing to do with your relations
with the U.S.
with your traditional allies.
Okay. Sir, this is my last question.
And your traditional allies must respect
Okay.
our bilateral cooperation.
All right. So this is my last question. You've been here several years. What would you like to be your legacy as ambassador to the Philippines when you're done? What would you like to be remembered for during your mission in Manila?
Oh,
Or are there so many?
I am a quite modest, even a shy guy to talk about
Your
my
legacy.
own legacy. It's too much. I'm sorry, Mr. Dante, it's too much. But but I would be happy to think that, to know that I managed to help some Filipinos to understand that we Russians and you Filipinos have a lot in common. And that's why we Russians and you Filipinos, Russians and Filipinos, as I have already emphasized, really deserve to be reliable partners and close friends.
I said that.
I am deeply convinced that it's true and it should be done.
Right. I mentioned earlier that that was my last question, but I remember that both our countries fought on the same
No
side.
limits, no limits for your question.
But both our countries fought on the same side during World War II, and I think this year we're celebrating an important milestone, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, and of course Russia played a key role in that war.
Mr. Danta, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this question, because it's very sensitive for all Russians.
Okay.
Because for us it was not just Second World War. For us it was a great patriotic war, because we defended our own land. We defended our right to speak Russian, to be Russians, be Russian. And we had to pay a terrible price for our independence. So 27 million people died. 2/3 of them are civilians. Because of the Nazi Germany pursued the policy of genocide against all Slavic people, including Russians. Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, because it was the Soviet Union at that time. So each family in my country lost at least one member during that war. And my family is not an exception. So, and that's why we call the day of the Victory Day a holiday with the tears in the eyes. Because we not only celebrate the victory, we always recall all those who perished, who died for our freedom, for our independence and sovereignty. That's why it's so sensitive for us. Yes, the Soviet army. So we call it the Soviet army, because the Soviet army consisted of people of all
Classes, yeah.
all classes, from all the walks of society, of all nations, of the former Soviet Union. It was our common victory. So the Soviet army, of course, played a key role in the liberation of Europe against the Nazism. Just one fact, 3/4 of all divisions of Nazi Germany and its satellites were destroyed in the Soviet Union by the Soviet army. So it's a clear fact, objective historic fact, which clearly shows who, first of all, demolished the Nazi Germany, the Nazism in Europe. Because now even some people, they
forget.
Now so many people are absolutely ignorant. Some people, so do you remember former US President Barack Obama one day, he said that allegedly his grandfather liberated the Nazi concentration camp in Oswiecim, Birkenau, Auschwitz. Unbelievable. The concentration camp in Poland, the whole Poland was liberated by the Soviet army. No Americans were there. But President Obama said his grandfather liberated. Can you imagine? And now even some people think that Berlin was captured by the American army. Berlin was captured by the Soviet army. And the Nazism in Germany was demolished first of all, by the Soviet army. At the same time, of course, we always remember a contribution, a help and support of our allies, like the United States, the United Kingdom, other nations.
Right.
And we are grateful to them for their support. They helped us. But the victory on the battlefield was achieved by the Soviet army. And first of all, Soviet soldiers died on the battlefield in order to liberate Europe from the Nazism. So this is a historic truth. And it shouldn't be forgotten. So I have already said, it's very sensitive for us, for Russians.
I get it.
Because it's part of our national mentality and psychology.
All right.
And of course, it's a great source for our national pride.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think we'd like to talk to you some more, but that's all the time we have for today. But I appreciate our discussion, and if there are any developments in the future, do let us know, and maybe we can do another interview like this. Thank you.
So thank you so much. So I'm always at your service.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you so much.